принято решение о проведении специальной военной операции.
Начались авиаудары, начались бомбежки, войска двинулись через границу, и мы проснулись в другом мире.
Быстрее, быстрее, родники накрывают, быстрее!
Вийти в одно!
Детей 200 вывозили, мирное население, маленькие.
Когда уже становилось очень-очень плохо, когда бомбежки усиливались, я просто сидела и думала, как безболезненнее умереть вместе с ним.
От жизни освободили, от жилья освободили, от работы освободили, от всего освободили.
Держава Юг-фашист, що він зробив? Його не може весь світ зупинити.
Hello, welcome to Washington Post Live. I'm Leanne Caldwell, anchor at Washington Post Live and also co-author of the Early Brief newsletter. Today, we are going to discuss the documentary Freedom on Fire, Ukraine's Fight for Freedom, with the producer and director, Evgeny Afineevsky, and former Ukraine Defense Minister, Oleksii Reznikov. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Good afternoon.
So, Evgeny, I want to start with you. This documentary was very powerful. It takes place in the first few months of the year, right after the invasion. I want to ask you, why did you decide to make it?
I think when the audience familiar with Winter on Fire, my first documentary that I covered Ukrainian uprising, or we can say Revolution of Dignity, Maidan, in 2013, 2014, I was witnessing the start of the war. And the start of the war was in 2014, February 20, when Putin lost his control over Ukraine and the former president Yanukovych fled the country. So I witnessed the start of the war. And in 2014, many of my friends asked me, will I be able to continue telling the story of the war? And I was inclining to give this chance to many filmmakers of Ukraine who are brilliant, whom I met during the Maidan uprising. And I was hoping that more and more movies will come out of there. But 8 years passed. And literally, we finding ourselves in a full-fledged scale invasion of 2022, where the unpunished crimes for 8 years, allowing Putin to unleash his war machine and escalate this to full-fledged war. And I even calling this the gates or the beginning of World War III. And that's what we witnessed in 22. And of course, my duty as a filmmaker who witnessed an incredible resilience, an incredible humanity, an incredible spirit of unity on the streets of Maidan, and people who fighting for their democracy, who fighting the future of their country, I wanted to continue this story. And immediately I initiated back the team that was filming Winter on Fire, and we started to cover this. Because for me, it was important to bring this war to the world, to show this war to the world, to give the voices to the people who were standing for the dignity of their country, who standing for the truth, and who were standing for the democracy. And that's why immediately I and my team in Ukraine, we started to document this war, and we continued for literally these years.
So, I'm sorry, I'm not able to hear you. I hope you guys can hear me. I'm not hearing my producer either. But so Minister Reznikov, sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. You were Ukraine's defense minister on February 22nd. What were your memories from that day? Did you know that this invasion was going to take place then?
Honestly, we got a lot of information from our partners and from our Ukrainian intelligence services that this war is coming. And we did all what we have to do, our leadership. But simultaneously, when you see that the war is on your threshold, you pray that it maybe will come past, like it was in the spring 2021 before the Easter holidays. The Russians also accumulated a lot of armed forces alongside of our borders. And after that, they get the phone call, double phone call with the President Biden and one personal meeting in Geneva. And certainly at winter 2022, we also thought that maybe we have a chance, but we were prepared. But, you know, every time, every night, you're sleeping and waiting. And you wake up and thinking, oh, fine, it's a one more peaceful day. That night, it was early morning after 4 p.m. I got the phone call from our chief commander, General Zaluzhny, and he told me, Minister, they crossed the border, Ukraine under attack. I answered that, okay, I will be in office during 20 minutes. I kissed my wife and told her that the war started, and I went to my office. And I met these first minutes with the General Zaluzhny and his commanders at the middle of night, I mean, without a lot of lights. And after that, I got the phone call from the head of Security Council that President Zelensky have decided to call a meeting of the National Security Council, and I went to the president's office.
Evgeny, just weeks after the Russian invasion, you were there. You had these shots from on the ground. We want to play a little bit from your documentary, and if you could, please just describe what is happening in this moment, as long as you can see the screen. What is happening here, Evgeny? What is the significance of these people walking across this bridge, the cars that are totaled, that have been shelled, these children who are being shown?
This image is taking us back into beginning of this war in 2022, and we're witnessing here. On one side, we're witnessing crimes because we're seeing civil cars literally bullet by the guns of Russian soldiers, and that's the war. That's the war, not against military, it's a war against civilians. We see kids, we see elderly, we see a paint bridge which is destroyed and people trying to cross the river, escape from the captivity, escape from the people who will torture them. And as we know, European Bucha, we saw after liberation the horrifying crimes. But by this time, people still not knew what expecting them. But some of people try to escape the war, and that's what we're witnessing here. But in the same time, we're seeing bullets, we're seeing cars, civil cars of the normal, ordinary people who were trying to save lives or save lives of their kids. And we're seeing cars bullet literally by the guns of the Russian soldiers.
Yeah, it was a very harrowing escape for many people, and some did not make it out alive. Minister Reznikov, what would this documentary say if it was made today, 2 years later? Because this documentary is about the few months after the war. What would it say now, based on the status of the war?
I would say that this is a very important contribution from the Evgeny side and his team to deliver to the world that this is a real war in Ukraine. Sometimes somebody call it crisis in Ukraine, conflict in Ukraine, but it's not correct word. It's not correct wording. It's correct word. It's only war in Ukraine. And we have, again, if you will come back to these images, to this footage, for me, it was a real evidence that we have war not with the normal official armed forces of the neighbor. We have war with the army of looters, rapists, and murderers. That's why in Ukraine we call them orcs. we are fighting with the orcs. We are fighting for our surviving. We are fighting for our lives, for our home, for our families, for our values. That's why it's very important to deliver this message to the world, because the war, it's a war of resources. We are fighting with the big monster, but if you remember the Bible story about the David and Goliath, the Goliath was a monster with a lot of muscles, but David, he was a brave, he was a creative, and he used sling to defeat this monster. That's why we need support from the civilized world. We need your support. We need your political support, economical support, and military support. And it allowed us to win this war. I'm absolutely sure we will win this war together with our partners.
And I would love to
Evgeny,
add,
yeah,
I would
go
love to
for it.
add something. Sorry that I'm jumping. You said that what it's about, if this movie is about today, to film today. We, in fact, were continue filming all this time with the help of Minister Reznikov, with the help of former Minister of Culture, with the amazing Minister of Foreign Affairs, Dmytro Kuleba. I've been supported, and it's allowed me to continue filming up until last minute. And in fact, this movie been updated because ongoing war twice. Last February, when it was the first anniversary of the full-scale invasion and 9th anniversary of the war, and last November, when I concluded also a part of the operation that Ukraine was having, and it was counteroffense. So I wanted to show to the world what's happening on the ground, and we continued all this time filming, and the movie was updated up until last November.
Great. And Evgeny, I want to ask you about the Pope. The Pope Francis has seen this movie. What was that moment like? What did he say after he saw it?
I think he condemned the war. We all heard that. He condemned the images of crimes. There is, Pope saw it twice. He saw it on the February 24th, 2023, and he saw it on 21st of November 2023. He saw it twice. That was the first time in history when Pope Francis was present in the audience with the Ukrainian heroes, with the Ukrainian protagonists from this movie, with the Ukrainian refugees, with the dignitaries from all over the world, with the government of Italy, with a lot of important people who were there witnessing together with him all these horrifying crimes of this war, and in the same time witnessing the bravery, the resilience, the human spirit of Ukrainian nation, who are ready to stand for what it is and defend their motherland, defend their future. And Pope admitted this. And even yesterday, during the papal audience, Pope recollected his meeting this Saturday on 25th of May with the kids from Ukraine who lost legs, who've been burned, and still resilient, still winning this war because they are learning how to walk on their prosthetic legs or with the burns on their body, and already achieving some of their goals, their dreams. He spoke about this in his papal audience yesterday. I think Pope, in every possible opportunity, condemning this war, and we witnessed this also when he was in the auditorium after the movie. He was speechless at the beginning. It was tough for him to put the words after witnessing so many crimes, but he told and condemned the war crimes that he witnessed. And in every opportunity, he trying to stand for Ukraine. He's behind scenes doing a lot of things for Ukraine, helping to bring kids back, either trying to free the soldiers, and he's trying to do his best to help Ukraine win.
Minister Reznikov, since the start of the war, Congress has provided, the United States Congress has provided more than $170 billion. This last tranche of money, about $60 billion, which was just approved within the last couple months, it was a long time coming. Can you talk about the what that long delay with that aid, did that hamper Ukraine's effort in this war? Was that problematic, or did the money, the weapons, is it coming in time?
You know that when you have a war, you will not have enough, and you will not everything in time. That's why it's very important for us, I mean, Ukrainian side, to planning all options, and we have to take in mind that in different countries it will take a time, and especially in political fields, to discussion, because we have allies, our partners, with a democratic style of governance. So that's why I would say that it was more important to discuss with our partners on this the very beginning on this invasion, what kind of help we need to deliver the messages that we need some types of weaponry like artillery, battle tanks, aircrafts, electronic warfare, etc., etc. And it was very important moment to see the unity of the NATO countries and other partners. And it was very serious job was done by the Secretary of Defense of the United States, Lloyd Austin, especially and his team, when it was set up, Ramstein format. I call it Ramstein Club. And we saw that in different moment of time, different countries have their capacity to help us, to deliver what we need. That's why it's not relevant to discussing, did you get everything in time? In the war, you always need something. But for me, more important is that we got this decision from the Congress. And I really appreciate it. And it's a very serious signal to other partners that you will stay with us as long as it takes.
What else does Ukraine need?
As I would like to remind that we still have the three types of priorities. Priority number one, air defense systems, all types, from the aircraft like F-16 till the sophisticated systems like Patriot, like NASAM, SAMS-T, IRIS-T, and other types of air defenses. We need to protect our sky, especially, a lot of atrocities in Kharkiv, in Sumy district, in Odessa, in other cities of Ukraine. That's why we need more air defense systems to protect our sky. Second priority, artillery systems and artillery shells for them, all types, to engage and to stop, to defeat enemy on the ground. Third priority, all types of electronic warfare, including jamming systems to intercept Russians' drones, and providing our counter-operation attacking to destroying their artillery systems, their tanks, their infantry fighting vehicles.
So have you received all of that? I know that the United States has provided most of that stuff, if not all of the three things that you've mentioned. But is it more quantity? And also with the jamming system specifically, the Washington Post has been reported in the past couple of days that the Russians have been able to jam many of the U.S. satellite-guided munitions. Has Ukraine been able to respond to that effectively?
That just as an example, 2 years ago, we didn't know about the FPV drones as a weaponry. We thought the FPV drones is like a toy for kids. But today we can use it. This war on the globe, I would say it's a last conventional war on the globe, because we have simultaneously options to use Soviet-era tanks, Soviet-era legacy artillery systems, and modern NATO standard systems, plus electronic warfare, like unmanned robotic systems. And as you can see in the Black Sea, for example, we're using sea drones and Ukrainian missiles Neptune, plus anti-ship missiles Harpoon from our partners, and we pushed out Russian's fleet from our Black Sea part of alongside of our territory, and it allowed us to open grain corridor and to deliver Ukrainian grain, Ukrainian sunflower oil to the Africa countries, Asia countries. It's a humanitarian task. So that's why every 3 months, something changing on a battlefield. This is a real competitions between technologies, between resources, and this war will win the side who will be more quick, faster with the technology, with the cutting edge approach.
Interesting. Yevgeny, you are on the ground. You talked to a lot of Ukrainians. As you said, you keep updating your movie, your documentary. What is the mood of Ukrainians right now on the ground? This war is persisting. There have been some setbacks for Ukraine. How are people feeling? What's the morale like?
People still ready to fight until they will win. So the moral is still there. Yes, there is a fatigue, there are people tired, because it's not 2 years, it's 10 years of this war. And today it's a big scale war. But in the same time, people determined to win. And I still see the resilience, I still see the determination. And that's a great sign for the nation who's standing. And they are looking toward us for the help because they're understanding that only united with the whole world, only united, they can win this war. Because it's not just war against them, it's the war against the world. Every century have a dictator, and every century have a monster who wants to take over the world. 1812, we had Napoleon. 1939, 1945, we had Hitler. So this century gives us person who have his imperialistic ambition and who don't like the democratic society. So Ukraine fighting for us, and Ukrainians, they're determined to stand for their land, but they also expecting us, A, to help them, and B, we also need to be reminding probably to our audience that in 1994, Ukraine, because they wanted to have world more safe, they agreed to destroy all the third largest nation, basically the arsenal of the nuclear power weapon. And it was a Budapest Memorandum, which guarantees security and safety to Ukraine. And we were one of the parts of this memorandum, together with the European Union countries. So at the end of the day, it's not just a moral obligation for the United States to stand for Ukraine, but we are all in this war. And it's important to explain to the world that, for me as a filmmaker who witnessing this from the ground, that this is not a war there. It's a war against the entire world led by Putin. So we need to stand with them. And their moral is really high, resilience is high. And I've seen it through the last 2 years, I've seen it through the last 10 years.
You bring up such a great point that we forget often. If you go back to the beginning in the early 90s, when the United States convinced Ukraine to give up their nuclear weapons in response that the United States would always protect Ukraine against any sort of aggression. So thank you for bringing up that history lesson for all of us. Minister Reznikov, I want to ask you about corruption in the country. That is something that we hear from Republicans who serve in Congress. They say that they have deep concerns about sending Ukraine money because of corruption in the civil service in the government. You resigned. You mentioned corruption in your resignation letter, but you were not tied to that. But I do want to say, is that a problem in Ukraine? Has the government in this war been able to root out and seed out some of that corruption that does give some people pause and concern?
You know that Ukraine is a former Soviet country, has different types of legacies. So corruption also one of the legacy from the Soviet period of time. And it's one of the main tasks for Ukrainians to fight with the corruptions and to build up civilized country, civilized society. And one of the main goal of the President Zelensky when he come to this position to fight with the corruptions. And this is a part of our reforms. and we're fighting with the corruption simultaneously with the Russians. During the wartime, we have to fight with the corruption. So that's why a lot of new legislations was adopted. And the main point that the kind of accountability, it's an instrument how to push the corruption to the on a light. That's why I am absolutely sure that all cents or all dollars what spent by our partners, including United States, could be checked by your special control missions, and you can spend your money paying to your paying to your industries, and we giving only weaponry. We're not giving the money for that. When we're using on the battlefield. But corruption, it's one of the main tasks for our society, because we want to live in normal, civilized world. So corruption is in different countries, but it's one of our enemies.
Great. And Minister Reznikov, I have another question for you, this time from a viewer. Rebecca Stutzman from Kentucky. She asks, what do you regard as the top priorities to achieve security and safety for Ukraine?
I think that my first reaction that we have to continue to discussing with our partners the future design or architecture of the security of the Europe, including Ukraine, because we're sacrificing not only for our values, but we're paying for the security in whole Europe, because the main goal of the imperialists in Kremlin to rebuild Berlin Wall, to come back to the Soviet period of time. They're trying to gathering so-called former Russian lands. And I think that Ukraine wants to live in a normal, standard, secure, prosperity life. And I think that next summit in Washington, D.C., NATO summit, we are waiting the real signal from our partners that Ukraine became a full-fledged member of NATO next period of time, because we protecting not only our lands, because if in a case Ukraine fall, next countries would be members of the NATO, and NATO's in Madrid summit recognized the Russia Federation as the main threat for NATO. That's why it's very important to again design the allies of NATO countries with the Ukraine, and it will be in the interest of both sides.
Evgeny, we're almost out of time. Last question to you. How does your movie end? How does the next phase of your documentary, how does it end?
Before I'm going to your question, I want to add something to what former ministers just said. Imperialistic desire of Russia is not just to collect the land. We all saw how during one of the broadcasts, Putin asked one of the kids, Russian kids, where the borders of Russia. And he was talking about Beringov Channel. But Putin stopped him there and said, you're wrong. The borders of Russia never ends. And I think we, as American nation, and many European countries, we all need to remember that it's not a joke, because Putin not see the borders of Russia ending there. He sees that the whole world belongs there. So my movie ends showing what great advance Ukraine had last year during their counter-offense, and also liberation of some of the territories, resilience of the people, and their desire to continue to fight. The real desire to stand for their future, for their motherland, and reminding to us that they will continue fighting for the world, for all of us.
Great. Thank you both so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. Again, Evgeny Afineevsky and Oleksii Reznikov, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Slava Ukraini.
And thanks to all of you for watching. Really appreciate it. For more of these important conversations, sign up for a Washington Post subscription. Get a free trial by visiting WashingtonPost.com/live. And finally, that's it from all of us. Thank you so much. Have a great day.